The air in the Chancellor's office was thick with the ozone stench of Force lightning. Shards of the great transparasteel window lay scattered across the floor, framing a dizzying view of Coruscant's twilight spires. Rain lashed against the building, each drop tracing a frantic path down the remaining glass. Palpatine, his face a ruin of melted flesh and raw hatred, was backed against the ledge. The kindly old man was gone, eviscerated by his own malevolence. In his place stood a monster, a true vision of the dark side. Mace Windu stood over him, his violet lightsaber humming with righteous fury. The weapon's glow cast long, dancing shadows that writhed like dying things. Two of his fellow Jedi Masters were dead on the floor, their bodies still unbroken. Another had been hurled through the shattered window, lost to the abyss below. Only Windu remained, his jaw set, his purpose absolute. He was the final barrier between the galaxy and the Sith Lord who had orchestrated its downfall. "You are under arrest, my lord." Windu's voice was a low growl, strained but unbroken. Palpatine cackled, a sound like tearing metal. "Are you threatening me, Master Jedi?" "I am the Senate." "The Senate will decide your fate," Windu retorted, his blade inching closer to the Chancellor's throat. "I am the Senate." Palpatine shrieked again, a mad declaration of power that seemed to shake the very foundations of the room. He lunged, but not with a weapon. He lunged with the Force. Another torrent of searing, blue-white lightning erupted from his fingertips, crashing against Windu's lightsaber. The Jedi Master grunted, his body straining as he angled the blade, deflecting the corrupt energy back towards its source. The lightning struck Palpatine, and his screams intensified. His body convulsed, and the last vestiges of his grandfatherly mask burned away. His skin bubbled and peeled, his eyes sinking into blackened sockets, turning a sickly, demonic yellow. It was a transformation of pure, unadulterated evil. It was at this precise moment that Anakin Skywalker burst into the room, his own lightsaber ignited, its blue blade a stark contrast to the chaos. He saw the scene in a flash of horrified understanding. Windu, holding the Sith Lord at bay. Palpatine, writhing in agony, his face a nightmare. The dead Jedi. The air crackled with a power so dark, so absolute, it felt like a physical weight on his soul. "You see, Anakin? He is trying to kill me!" Palpatine cried out, his voice a pathetic, pleading whine that was grotesquely at odds with the monstrous power he was unleashing. Anakin stood frozen, his heart hammering against his ribs. His mind was a maelstrom of conflicting loyalties and desperate fears. Padme. He saw her in his mind's eye, dying in childbirth. It was a vision that had haunted his every waking moment, a terror that had driven him here, to the feet of the one man who promised the power to save her. The power of the dark side. The power to cheat death. "I can't let you kill him, Master," Anakin said, his voice trembling. "He must stand trial. He has control of the Senate and the courts," Windu grunted, the effort of deflecting the lightning immense. "He's too dangerous to be left alive." The words echoed the very thoughts Anakin had once had about Count Dooku. He had executed the Count at Palpatine's urging. It was not the Jedi way. But this felt different. This was not a helpless prisoner. This was the source of all the galaxy's pain, the architect of a war that had claimed billions of lives. Palpatine's lightning faltered for a moment. He looked at Anakin, his yellow eyes boring into him. "I am your pathway to power," he rasped. "I have the power to save the one you love. You must choose." The temptation was a physical thing, a hook in his soul. Save Padme. It was all that mattered. He could feel the dark side beckoning, a warm, inviting tide promising to wash away all his fear and helplessness. His knuckles were white on the hilt of his saber. His arm twitched, ready to move, to strike Windu down and claim his prize. But then, through the haze of his fear, another thought pierced through. He looked at Palpatine's true face. It was not a face of power. It was a face of insatiable hunger, of decay, of utter selfishness. This was not a being who gave. This was a being who only took. The power he offered was a lie, a gilded cage built on suffering. He remembered Keegan's gentle wisdom, Obi-Wan's unwavering brotherhood, Ahsoka's pained departure. He remembered the ideals he had sworn to uphold. He saw the future Palpatine offered. A future where he was a slave to his own fear, forever chasing a power that would never be enough. A future where he would sacrifice everything he was for a promise from a monster. He looked at Mace Windu, a man he did not always agree with, but a man who stood for the Republic, for the Jedi, for order. An order that, for all its flaws, was built on selflessness, not greed. "He's a Sith Lord!" Anakin yelled, the words tearing from his throat, not as a plea for Palpatine, but as a confirmation for Windu. As a declaration for himself. Windu seemed to absorb the conviction in Anakin's voice. He needed no further confirmation. The lightning sputtered and died as Palpatine exhausted his immediate reserves, his body a twisted wreck. In that split second of vulnerability, Windu acted. He did not hesitate. With a final, decisive cry that echoed with the full weight of the Jedi Order, he swung his lightsaber. The violet blade cut through the air in a clean, swift arc. There was no scream. Just the soft, final thud of a body hitting the rain-slicked ledge. Silence. The oppressive darkness that had choked the room, that had choked the galaxy for a decade, vanished. It did not fade, it shattered like glass. A profound emptiness was left in its wake, filled only by the sound of the wind and the rain. Anakin Skywalker stood, his lightsaber still humming in his hand, its blue light illuminating the horrific scene. His wrist had twitched, his muscles had coiled to intervene. But he had not. He had chosen. Mace Windu deactivated his blade. The sudden quiet was deafening. He turned slowly to face Anakin, his expression unreadable, exhausted. He looked from Anakin's wide, horrified eyes to the still form on the ledge, then back again. He had expected a confrontation. He had been prepared to fight Anakin, too. Instead, he saw a young man trembling on the precipice, who had looked into the abyss and, against all odds, had chosen to step back. "It is done," Windu said, his voice low and heavy with the finality of the act. Anakin finally deactivated his own lightsaber. The strength went out of his legs, and he sagged against the doorframe, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The visions of Padme's death, which had been so vivid, so terrifyingly real, were now fading. They were like a bad dream receding with the morning light. In their place was a cold, stark reality. The Chancellor of the Republic was dead. And he had let it happen. What have we done?" Anakin whispered, the question not an accusation, but a plea for understanding. Windu walked over to the bodies of his fallen comrades, his movements stiff with grief and exhaustion. He placed a hand on Kit Fisto's shoulder for a moment before straightening up. "We have ended a war," he said, his voice devoid of triumph. "And we have done what we must." He looked at Anakin, a new, cautious respect in his eyes. "You did well, Skywalker. You faced your fear and did not let it control you." Anakin could only nod, his throat too tight to speak. He felt a strange, hollow relief. The crushing weight of Palpatine's influence, an influence he hadn't even fully realized was there, was gone. He felt free. But also terrified. The path forward was no longer clear. The galaxy was without its leader. The Jedi had just committed an act that could be seen as treason. Far across the city, in her apartment, Padme Amidala suddenly sat up in bed. A wave of darkness that had been pressing in on her, a feeling of impending doom she couldn't explain, had just vanished. She placed a hand on her swollen belly and felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in months. She didn't know why, but she knew something had changed. Something monumental. In the Jedi Temple, Master Yoda's meditation was shattered. The dark shroud that had clouded the Force for so long was ripped away. He gasped, his eyes flying open. The future, once so murky and hidden, was now a swirling vortex of new possibilities. The Sith Lord was gone. But the cost, and the consequences, were yet to be seen. He reached out with the Force towards the Chancellor's office and felt two living presences, Mace Windu and Anakin Skywalker. And the cold, empty void of the one who had been Darth Sidious's. Back in the ruined office, Windu activated his comlink. Master Yoda, come to the Chancellor's office. Bring security. The Chancellor is dead. There has been an assassination attempt, and a revelation. He paused, looking at Anakin again. Skywalker is with me. He is safe. Anakin pushed himself to his feet, his legs still unsteady. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness. He looked out the shattered window at the endless city below. The war was not over. The separatist armies were still active. The Republic was in chaos. But the Sith were gone. For the first time in a long time, he felt a flicker of something he had thought long lost. Hope. The Jedi Council chamber was a space of solemn silence, a stark contrast to the political storm brewing outside its doors. The body of Palpatine had been removed, taken into Jedi custody as evidence. The testimony of Anakin and Mace Windu had been given, recorded, and corroborated by the lingering traces of absolute darkness that even the less Force-sensitive masters could feel had been purged from the Chancellor's office. Yoda sat in his chair, his eyes closed, his small form radiating a deep, troubled concentration. Ki-Adi-Mundi paced back and forth, his brow furrowed. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood beside Anakin, a hand resting on his former Padawan's shoulder, a silent gesture of support that spoke volumes. Anakin had confessed everything. His nightmares, his secret meetings with Palpatine, his marriage to Padme. He had laid his soul bare before Obi-Wan, and then before the Council. The revelations had come like aftershocks. The existence of a Sith Lord as Chancellor was the earthquake. Anakin's transgressions were the tremors that followed, shaking the very foundations of the Jedi Order. A Sith Lord, the Chancellor was, Yoda finally said, his voice raspy. For so long, clouded our vision, he has. A great victory, this is. But a great danger, it brings. The Senate will not see it as a victory, Ki-Adi-Mundi stated bluntly. They will see it as an assassination. A Jedi coup. Maz Amedda is already whipping the loyalist senators into a frenzy. They are demanding Master Windu's arrest. The evidence is clear, Obi-Wan argued. The recordings from the office, the physical transformation of Palpatine's body, the testimony of a Jedi Master and the Chosen One himself. Evidence can be manipulated, Plo Koon countered, his voice resonating from his mask. They will say we fabricated it to seize power. Palpatine was a popular leader. He was seen as the savior of the Republic. Anakin spoke for the first time since the meeting began, his voice steady, imbued with a newfound clarity. Then we must be transparent. We must show them everything. We must trust in the Republic, and in its people. Bail Organa, Padme. Senator Amidala, they will help us. They will stand for the truth, he corrected himself, the habit of secrecy dying hard. Mace Windu, who had been standing silently by the window, turned to face them. Skywalker is right. Hiding this will only confirm their suspicions. We must present our case to the full Senate. And we must do it now, he looked at Yoda. We also have another problem. The separatist leaders. Palpatine sent Anakin to Mustafar to end the war. The chilling implication hung in the air. Palpatine had intended for Anakin to slaughter them all. A trap, it was, Yoda murmured. Sent you into the darkness, he would have. But the shutdown command for the droid armies, with Palpatine gone, it will not be sent. The war is not over, Obi-Wan realized with a sinking feeling. The Separatist Council is still alive, and their armies are still active. A new, urgent strategy was needed. The Jedi were now fighting on two fronts, a political battle for their survival on Coruscant, and the smoldering embers of the Clone Wars across the galaxy. Our course is clear, Yoda declared, his eyes opening to fix on each master in turn. Master Windu, Master Kenobi, with Senator Organa and Senator Amidala, you will address the Senate. Present the truth, you must. All of it. He then turned his gaze to Anakin Skywalker. A different path, you must take. To Mustafar, you will go. Anakin's heart leaped into his throat. Mustafar. The place Palpatine had sent him. But not to destroy, Yoda continued, his voice firm. To negotiate. A chance for peace, there is. Without their Sith Master pulling the strings, perhaps reason, we can find in them. It was an unprecedented move. Negotiate with Newt Gunray and the others? After years of brutal warfare? Is that wise, Master? Ki-Adi-Mundi questioned. They are war criminals. Criminals, they may be. But alive, they are, Yoda countered. And a quicker end to this war, their surrender would bring. A test for you, this will be, Anakin. Anakin understood. This was not a test of his power, but of his character. Palpatine wanted him to go there as an executioner. Yoda was sending him as a peacemaker. It was a chance to prove that his choice in the Chancellor's office was not a fluke, but a true change of heart. I will not fail you, Anakin said, his voice filled with resolve. Obi-Wan squeezed his shoulder. You won't be alone, he looked to the Council. I will go with him. Two Jedi will show that this is a diplomatic mission, not an attack. Yoda nodded his assent. So be it. Go now. The future of the Republic, and the Jedi, may rest on what happens in the next few cycles. As Anakin and Obi-Wan prepared to depart, a small, cloaked figure slipped into the docking bay. It was Padme. She had used her senatorial clearance to bypass security. She ran to Anakin, her face etched with worry and relief. I felt it, she whispered, throwing her arms around him. The moment it happened. It was like the sun coming out. Anakin held her tightly, burying his face in her hair. Palpatine was the Sith Lord, he said, his voice muffled. He was the one behind everything. I almost. Sure, she soothed, pulling back to look him in the eyes. You didn't. You chose. You chose us. Obi-Wan stood a respectful distance away, a small, sad smile on his face. The secret was out, and the galaxy had not ended. Perhaps, he thought, the old rules were not as immutable as they had believed. I have to go, Anakin told Padme. To Mustafar. We are going to try and end the war. Be careful, she pleaded. Bail and I will handle the Senate. We'll make them listen. He kissed her, a long, deep kiss that was not secret or stolen, but open and full of promise. I love you, he said, for what felt like the first time without a shadow of fear attached. I know, she replied, her own smile finally returning. As Anakin and Obi-Wan's shuttle lifted off from Coruscant, the first session of the Emergency Senate was being called to order. Mace Windu, flanked by Bail Organa, prepared to face the accusations and deliver the most important testimony of his life. The galaxy held its breath. The age of the Sith was over. The age of uncertainty had just begun. The journey to Mustafar was tense. Anakin and Obi-Wan sat in the cockpit of their Jedi shuttle, the blackness of hyperspace streaking past the viewport. The silence between them was not uncomfortable, but filled with the weight of unspoken truths and recent revelations. You know, I'm not sure which is more daunting, Obi-Wan said, breaking the quiet. facing a council of desperate separatist leaders on a volcanic planet, or facing the Jedi Council after you told them about Padme? Anakin managed a faint smile. I think I prefer Mustafar. At least there, the heat is on the outside. He grew serious again. Thank you, Obi-Wan. For everything. For trusting me. I never stopped trusting you, Anakin, Obi-Wan replied softly. I was merely afraid you had stopped trusting yourself. I am glad to see I was wrong. He paused, choosing his words carefully. About Padme, the council is divided. The old ways are hard to change. But Yoda? I believe he understands. Love is not the path to the dark side. Fear of loss is. You have faced that fear. That makes all the difference. Anakin nodded, the truth of Obi-Wan's words resonating deep within him. His love for Padme was not a weakness. It was his greatest strength. It was the anchor that had held him back from the abyss. As they reverted to real space, the hellish landscape of Mustafar filled the viewport. Rivers of molten lava flowed like fiery serpents across a blackened, volcanic landscape. The Separatist stronghold, a massive industrial facility, stood precariously over a lava fall, its shields shimmering in the oppressive heat. Charming, Obi-Wan muttered. You'd think they'd have chosen a vacation spot with a bit more water? Anakin hailed the facility, his voice calm and official. This is Jedi Master Anakin Skywalker and Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi of the Galactic Republic. We request permission to land. We have come to discuss terms of surrender. There was a long, crackling silence. Inside the command center, the Separatist leaders were in a panic. Newt Gunray, Rune Harko, Wat Tambor, and the others stared at the transmission in disbelief. Jedi! Here! Gunray shrieked. It's a trick! Lord Sidious promised us victory. He promised we would be safe. Lord Sidious is gone, a new voice cut in, calm and collected. It was General Grievous, who had arrived from Utapau shortly after his own battle with Obi-Wan, having escaped once more. The cyborg general, however, had been listening to galactic comms. Communications from Coruscant are in chaos. They speak of the Chancellor's death at the hands of the Jedi. The Jedi killed the Chancellor? Wat Tambor gurgled through his suit's vocoder. This changes the parameters of the conflict entirely. Indeed, Grievous said, his golden eyes narrowing. The Jedi claim he was the Sith Lord we served. If that is true, we have been pawns in a game far larger than we knew. He turned to the comm unit. And if it is false, the Republic is fracturing. Either way, our position has changed. He activated the comm. Jedi Kenobi. Skywalker. You may land. But you will come unarmed. Any treachery, and you will be incinerated. Gracious as ever, Obi-Wan commented dryly to Anakin. All right, let's go have a chat with the galaxy's most wanted. They landed the shuttle on the designated platform. The heat was immense, a physical force that blasted them the moment the ramp lowered. They left their lightsabers clipped to their belts but made no move to draw them, a gesture of fragile trust. They were met by a contingent of battle droids, who escorted them into the facility's main control room. The Separatist Council was assembled, a motley collection of greedy executives and military fanatics, all of them looking nervous. General Grievous stood before them, his forearms clasped behind his back, a posture of grim authority. Kenobi, Grievous rasped, his voice a distorted cough. We meet again. I see you brought the boy with you this time. General, Obi-Wan greeted with a polite nod. We've come to offer you a choice. The war is over. Chancellor Palpatine, also known as Darth Sidious, is dead. A murmur went through the council. Newt Gunray sputtered, lies. It's a Jedi trick. Is it? Anakin stepped forward, his presence commanding. He was your master. He promised you victory, But he orchestrated this entire war. He controlled both sides. We were all his puppets. He is gone now, killed by Master Windu. There is no one left to give your droid armies their orders. Grievous studied Anakin intently. The Jedi killer had always seen Skywalker as an arrogant, reckless boy. But the man standing before him now was different. There was a calm, a focus, a power that was controlled, not wild. "And what do you offer?" Grievous demanded. "An execution? A Republic prison?" "We offer an end to the bloodshed," Obi-Wan said. "Surrender yourselves and your armies. You will be put on trial for your crimes, yes. We cannot erase what has happened. But you will be given a fair trial in the courts of the new Republic, a republic free of the Sith's influence. Your people will not have to suffer any longer." "A trial is a death sentence," Rune Harko cried. "Is it?" Anakin countered, his voice resonating with sincerity. "Or is it a chance? A chance to expose the truth of this war. To show the galaxy how you were used by Palpatine. Help us rebuild what he destroyed. Help us create a lasting peace." The plea was unexpected. They had anticipated threats, demands, a final battle. Not this. Not an appeal to a future they didn't think they had. Wat Tambor adjusted the controls on his suit. "The Techno-Union's assets, our factories, what would become of them?" "They would be repurposed," Obi-Wan explained. "To rebuild worlds devastated by the war. To serve the people of the galaxy, not to profit from their suffering." Grievous let out a harsh, rasping laugh. "Peace? Rebuilding? You Jedi are fools. There is only power, and a will to use it." He flexed his clawed hands. "Sidious's may be gone, but I am not. The droid army is mine to command." He suddenly lunged, not at Obi-Wan, but at Newt Gunray. He grabbed the Neimoidian viceroy by his robes, lifting him into the air. "You have been weak. Sniveling cowards, all of you. I will lead the Separatist alliance to a true victory." Two of his arms shot out, igniting two lightsabers taken from his collection. The blue and green blades hummed to life, casting a deadly glow on the terrified faces of the council members. "Grievous, don't!" Obi-Wan shouted, his hand instinctively going to his own saber. But Anakin was faster. Not with his weapon, but with the Force. He thrust his hand forward, and a powerful wave of energy slammed into Grievous, sending the cyborg general flying backwards. He crashed into the far wall with a deafening clang of metal, dropping Gunray, who scrambled away in terror. Grievous rose, his metal body screeching in protest. His lightsabers were still ignited. "So, the boy has some fight in him after all." "This is not a fight," Anakin said, his voice low and dangerous. He and Obi-Wan now stood between Grievous and the Council, their own lightsabers still on their belts. "This is a negotiation. And it is over. It is over when I say it is over." Grievous roared, and charged. Back on Coruscant, the Senate chamber was in an uproar. Mace Windu stood at the central podium, his face a stoic mask as insults and accusations were hurled from the floating pods of the Loyalist senators. "Traitor! Assassin! This is a Jedi coup!" Bail Organa stood beside him, trying to call for order, his voice drowned out by the cacophony. Padme watched from her own pod, her heart aching with frustration. They were not listening. They were drowning in fear and suspicion. "Order! We must have order!" Maz Amedda, the speaker, called out, though his voice lacked any real conviction. He was fanning the flames, not dousing them. Finally, Yoda, who had been observing from the gallery, sent a wave of calming energy through the Force, subtly touching the minds of the most agitated senators. The shouting subsided to a low grumble. Into this fragile quiet, Mace Windu spoke, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. Chancellor Palpatine was Darth Sidious, a Sith Lord who orchestrated the Clone Wars to amass power and destroy the Republic. We did not assassinate a Chancellor. We stopped a tyrant. Lies, a senator from Kuwait shouted. Where is your proof? Our proof is here, Padme's voice suddenly rang out as her pod moved to the center, next to Windu's. She activated a large holoprojector. An image flickered to life for the entire Senate to see. It was the security recording from Palpatine's office. They saw it all. The arrival of the Jedi Masters. Palpatine's calm demeanor turning to fury. The eruption of his lightsaber. The deaths of Ajon Kola and CCTing. They saw Palpatine hurl Kit Fisto from the window. And then they saw it, the monstrous, undeniable truth. They saw the Force lightning, the horrifying transformation, the face of pure evil. They heard his mad declaration, I am the Senate. They saw him plead with Anakin, offering him power, admitting his ability to manipulate the dark side. A horrified silence fell over the Senate. The images were undeniable, raw, and terrifying. He controlled everything, Bail Organa said, his voice resonating with grim authority. The Separatists, the Clone Army, the war itself. He was poised to declare himself emperor and wipe out any who opposed him, starting with the Jedi. Master Windu did not commit treason. He saved the Republic. The mood in the chamber began to shift. Doubt crept into the faces of the loyalists. The pieces were falling into place. The endless war, the emergency powers, the erosion of their liberties, it all had a single, monstrous source. What do we do now? A senator from Chandrila asked, her voice trembling. Now, Padme declared, her voice ringing with strength and hope, we heal. We end this war, not with more fighting, but with peace. We dismantle the war machine that has profited from our suffering. And we build a new republic, a better one, on the foundations of truth and justice. Her words hung in the air, a promise of a future they had almost lost. The tide was turning. The lie was broken. But the ghost of the Empire, the contingency Palpatine had built, was still waiting in the shadows, ready to reclaim the galaxy from the light. On Mustafar, the duel was short and brutal. Grievous, for all his skill and fury, was facing two of the finest Jedi Masters in the Order, one of whom was the Chosen One, now unburdened by fear and conflict. As Grievous charged, Obi-Wan and Anakin finally drew their blades. The cavernous control room lit up with the clash of blue, green, and the stolen colors of Grievous weapons. The cyborg was a whirlwind of spinning blades, his mechanical form allowing for attacks from multiple angles at once. But Obi-Wan was the master of Surisu, the defensive form. His blade was a shield, a blur of motion that met every one of Grievous' strikes with perfect precision, deflecting and redirecting, conserving his energy. He was a stone against which Grievous' storm broke. Anakin, however, was the tempest. He moved with a grace and power that was breathtaking. He was not the angry, reckless fighter he had once been. This was Gem so perfected, controlled, precise, and utterly overwhelming. He flowed around Grievous' attacks, his blade a torrent of strikes that hammered at the general's defenses. The Separatist leaders huddled in a corner, watching in terror as the three figures battled. This was not the war of faceless droids and distant explosions they were used to. This was personal, violent, and terrifyingly close. Grievous focused his assault on Obi-Wan, recognizing him as the more defensive opponent. He pressed his attack, hoping to break through Kenobi's guard. It was the opening Anakin was waiting for. While Grievous was locked in a furious exchange with Obi-Wan, Anakin leaped over the fray, landing behind the cyborg general. With two swift, powerful slashes, he severed the two arms holding Grievous' extra lightsabers. The blades clattered to the floor, deactivated. Grievous roared in fury and spun around, now facing Anakin with his remaining two arms. But he was off balance, his multi-weapon advantage gone. Anakin met his charge head-on. Their blades locked, blue against blue, blue against green. "You cannot win, Jedi!" Grievous snarled, his mechanical legs straining to push Anakin back. "The war is over, General," Anakin said, his voice calm, his eyes fixed on Grievous' reptilian gaze behind the metal plating. "It's time to let go of the hate." He used the Force, not as a weapon, but as a precise tool. He didn't push Grievous back. Instead, he subtly manipulated the durasteel plates on the cyborg's chest, the ones protecting his organ sac. The plates buckled inward, just slightly, but it was enough. Grievous gasped, a wet, gurgling sound. The pressure on his internal organs was immense. His strength faltered. In that moment of weakness, Anakin twisted his blade, disarming the general completely. Grievous' last two lightsabers flew from his grasp. The cyborg staggered back, clutching his chest, coughing violently. He was defeated. Obi-Wan stepped forward, his lightsaber pointed at Grievous' throat. "It's over, General. Yield." Grievous looked from Obi-Wan's determined face to Anakin's calm one. He saw no hatred in their eyes, only resolve. His own burning hatred, the only thing that had fueled him for years, suddenly felt hollow. He had lost. His war was over. His master was dead. There was nothing left. With a final, shuddering cough, he collapsed to his knees. "I yield," he rasped, the words barely audible. Anakin and Obi-Wan deactivated their lightsabers. A collective sigh of relief went through the Separatist Council. Newt Gunray, seeing his chance, scrambled towards the main console. "The droid armies! I will shut them down! We surrender! We surrender!" He frantically began inputting the deactivation codes. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 different battlefields, the endless legions of B-1 and B-2 battle droids, the droideckers, the spider droids, all of them stopped. They froze in place, their red optical sensors dimming to black. One moment, they were a relentless tide of death. The next, they were just inert pieces of metal. A stunned silence fell over planets from Felucia to Megiddo. Clone troopers, who had been bracing for another charge, lowered their weapons in disbelief. The war, it was just over. On Mustafar, Anakin looked at the defeated General Grievous and the terrified Separatist leaders. He felt no triumph, no satisfaction. Only a deep, profound sense of weary relief. "Contact the fleet," Obi-Wan said to him quietly. "Tell them the war is over. For real this time." As Anakin relayed the news, a new era for the galaxy began. It began not with a grand declaration or a formal treaty, but with a single command, spoken in fear and desperation in a hot, dark room at the edge of the galaxy. It began with silence. The days that followed were a whirlwind of change. The surrender of the Separatist Council and the shutdown of the droid armies sent a wave of euphoria across the Republic. Celebrations erupted on countless worlds. The Clone Wars, the bloodiest conflict in galactic history, were finally at an end. Anakin and Obi-Wan returned to Coruscant not just as heroes, but as the architects of the final peace. They brought with them the captured Separatist leaders and a subdued General Grievous, who was immediately transferred to a high-security medical and detention facility. The Senate, now firmly united behind the leadership of Bail Organa and Padme Amidala, moved swiftly. With Palpatine's treachery exposed, his emergency powers were revoked. A provisional government was formed, with Bail Organa elected as interim chancellor. His first act was to formally declare an end to the war and begin the long, arduous process of demilitarization. The Jedi Order, for its part, entered a period of deep introspection. The revelation of Palpatine as a Sith Lord who had operated under their very noses for years was a humbling blow. The council convened, not in judgment, but in discussion. the most pressing topic was Anakin Skywalker and his relationship with Padme Amidala. It was a debate that threatened to fracture the Order. The traditionalists, led by masters like Oppo Rancisis, argued that Anakin's attachments were a clear violation of the Code, a path that had almost led him to disaster. They argued for his censure, perhaps even his expulsion. But a new, more progressive voice emerged, championed by Obi-Wan and, surprisingly, Master Yoda. A rule, the Code is not a prison, Yoda stated in a pivotal council session. Attachment is forbidden, yes. Why? Because fear of loss, it can lead to anger, to hate, to suffering. The path to the dark side, that is, he looked around the circle of masters. But see Skywalker, I do. His love for his wife, his unborn children, not a path to darkness, it was for him. An anchor, it became. The thing that pulled him back from the precipice. Obi-Wan spoke next. Anakin did not fall because of his attachments. He nearly fell because he was forced to hide them. He was isolated by his fear, and Palpatine exploited that isolation. If we had been an order that he could have come to for guidance, for help, the Sith Lord would never have gained such a foothold in his heart. The argument was powerful. Anakin's choice had not just saved the galaxy, it had challenged the most fundamental tenets of the Jedi Order. It proved that love, in itself, was not the enemy. In the end, a compromise was reached, a decision that would redefine the Jedi for a new generation. Anakin Skywalker would not be expelled. He was, in fact, formally granted the rank of Jedi Master, a recognition of his profound act of will and his role in ending the war. However, the Council also ruled that the Order needed to change. The strictures against attachment would be re-evaluated. They would not be abandoned, but reformed. The Jedi would learn to guide their members through emotional connections, rather than simply forbidding them. For Anakin, it was a vindication beyond his wildest dreams. He and Padme no longer had to hide their love. They were married in a small, public ceremony attended by their closest friends, Obi-Wan, Bail Organa, C-3PO, and R2-D2. It was a symbol of the new era, a union of the Jedi and the Republic, of duty and love. A few months later, Padme gave birth. Not to one child, but to two. A boy and a girl. They named them Luke and Leia. Anakin held his children for the first time, a feeling of overwhelming love washing over him. This was what he had been so afraid of losing. This was what Palpatine had tried to twist into a weapon against him. But holding them now, he felt no fear. Only a fierce, protective joy. He was a father. A husband. A Jedi Master. He was whole. But as the galaxy celebrated its newfound peace, Palpatine's final, venomous contingency began to stir. Deep within the structures of the Republic military and intelligence services, his most loyal followers, those who had been privy to his true plans, did not celebrate. They mourned. And they prepared. A secret transmission was broadcast on a hidden channel, sent from a secure location on Coruscant itself. It reached a select few: Grand Moff Tarkin, Director Krennic of the Advanced Weapons Research Division, and a handful of high-ranking admirals and generals who had been personally cultivated by Palpatine. The message was a pre-recorded hologram of the late Emperor, his face still in its kindly Chancellor guise. "If you are receiving this message," the hologram of Palpatine began, his voice calm and chilling, "then I have been betrayed. The Jedi have staged a coup, and the Republic I worked so hard to build is on the verge of collapse. But my death is not the end. It is merely a new beginning. The Empire must be born from the ashes of this treachery." The hologram continued, laying out the details of Operation Cinder. A scorched earth protocol designed to punish the galaxy for its disloyalty. Climate disruption arrays hidden in orbit above key worlds, including Naboo. Attacks designed to sow chaos and terror, to make the galaxy beg for the iron-fisted order that only the Empire could provide. But Cinder is only the beginning, Palpatine's ghost explained. The true future of the Empire lies hidden. My fleet awaits in the unknown regions. My final apprentice holds the key. The Sentinel will guide you. He will be my vengeance. The Jedi believe they have won. They have only delayed the inevitable. Long live the Empire. The hologram vanished. On the bridge of his Star Destroyer, the Executrix, Grand Moff Tarkin smiled, a cold, predatory expression. The game was not over. It had just entered a new, more exciting phase. The Jedi had removed a politician. Now they would face true power. The new conflict was not a war of droids and clones. It would be a war of ideology, of terror, and of absolute, unwavering order against the messy chaos of freedom. The ghost of the Empire was rising. The first strike came without warning. Above the peaceful, green world of Naboo, 3 satellites, seemingly innocuous communication relays, activated. They were not relays. They were climate disruption arrays, the instruments of operation, Cinder. Storms of unnatural violence began to brew in the planet's upper atmosphere. Hurricane-force winds, torrential lightning, and continent-spanning cyclones descended upon the idyllic world. The beautiful city of Theed was battered by winds that tore roofs from buildings. The Gungan swamps were flash-flooded, their delicate ecosystem thrown into chaos. It was not an invasion. It was a calculated act of terror, designed to break the spirit of a world that symbolized the new peace, Padme's homeworld. The distress calls reached Coruscant within the hour. The newly formed Republic Council, led by Chancellor Organa, was thrown into emergency session. It's a coordinated attack, Admiral Akbar reported, his voice grim as he pointed to a galactic map. Similar atmospheric disturbances are being reported above Chandrila, Alderaan, and a dozen other worlds that were vocal in their opposition to Palpatine's regime. There are no fleets, no armies. Just these storms. Padme watched the holovid reports from Naboo, her face pale with horror. "This is his doing," she whispered, her voice trembling with rage. "Palpatine. It's a final act of spite." Anakin, who stood beside her, placed a reassuring hand on her arm, but his own eyes were dark with fury. This was a direct assault on his family, on the peace he had fought so hard to secure. "It's more than spite," he said, his voice low. "It's a message. To show that even in death, he can still make the galaxy suffer." The Jedi Council was convened. "A contingency, this is," Yoda mused. "Left behind by the Sith Lord. A weapon that attacks not armies, but hope. We have to stop it," Mace Windu declared. "We need to find the source of these attacks and disable them." The Republic's fledgling intelligence network, still being purged of Palpatine's loyalists, worked frantically. They traced the energy signatures of the arrays and discovered their control source, a heavily modified Star Destroyer lurking in the deep space shipping lanes near the Abrogado system. Its signature matched that of the Executrix, the flagship of Grand Moff Tarkin. "Tarkin," Bail Organa said, his expression grim. He was one of Palpatine's inner circle. A true believer in the doctrine of rule through fear. "Then he is the one leading this shadow of the Empire," Obi-Wan concluded. He and whoever else remained loyal to Palpatine's vision. A plan was quickly formed. A Republic task force, led by Anakin Skywalker aboard his flagship, the Resolute, would jump to the Abrogado system and engage Tarkin's ship. It was a test of the new Republic's resolve, and a chance for Anakin to prove himself not just as a Jedi, but as a defender of the galaxy. Anakin felt a familiar thrum of anticipation as the Resolute prepared to jump to hyperspace. But this time, it was different. It was not the thrill of battle that motivated him, but a cold, clear sense of duty. He was not just a general seeking victory, he was a husband and father protecting his home. As the fleet gathered, he took a moment to compat me. Her face appeared on the hollow projector in his quarters, the twins sleeping peacefully in a cot behind her. "Be safe," she said, her voice full of love and concern. "Always," he promised. "Tarkin thinks he can break us with fear. We're going to show him how wrong he is." The Republic fleet jumped to hyperspace, a silver streak of hope against the darkness. When they emerged in the Abrogado system, they found the Executrix waiting for them. But it was not alone. It was flanked by 2 other Imperial-class Star Destroyers, ships that were supposed to have been decommissioned. "It's a trap," Anakin said, his eyes narrowing as he studied the tactical display. The ships were positioned to create a deadly crossfire. "They were waiting for us," Admiral Yularen confirmed from his station. "Their shields are up, and they are launching fighters." The calm of deep space was shattered by the flash of turbolaser fire and the scream of TIE fighters. The battle began. Anakin was in his element. From the bridge of the Resolute, he directed his fleet with masterful precision. "Commander Apo, bring us about. Target their lead destroyer's shield generators." "Rex," he said over a private channel to his most trusted clone captain, who now led the elite 501st Legion, "I need you and your men to board that ship and find the control center for Cinder. We can't destroy the ship until the arrays are deactivated, or they might trigger a dead man switch." "Copy that, General," Rex's voice crackled back. "It will be done." Obi-Wan, coordinating the Jedi starfighter squadrons from the temple on Coruscant, watched the battle unfold on the main holotable. "Anakin's plan is aggressive," he noted to Master Windu. "He's committing a significant portion of his force to boarding actions." "He is not trying to win a battle of attrition," Windu observed. "He is performing surgery. He knows the objective isn't to destroy the enemy, but to save the worlds they are targeting. He is fighting like a Jedi." The space battle was a chaotic ballet of destruction. Starfighters weaved through forests of green and red energy bolts. Explosions blossomed silently in the vacuum of space. The Resolute shuddered as it took a direct hit to its forward deflectors. "Shields at 50%, a clone officer shouted. "Stay on course," Anakin commanded, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. "Rex, what's your status?" "We are in," Rex reported. "The halls are crawling with stormtroopers, sir. Not clones. These are new recruits. Fanatics." The fighting inside the Executrix was brutal. Rex and the 501st pushed through corridors, their blue and white armor a stark contrast to the stark white of the new Imperial stormtroopers. The clones were seasoned veterans, fighting with a grim efficiency that the new recruits, for all their zeal, could not match. They fought their way to the ship's command bridge. But it was empty, save for a single, active holoprojector on the main table. Grand Moff Tarkin appeared, his image cool and composed. "Captain Rex," Tarkin greeted, a thin, cruel smile on his lips. "I commend your tenacity. But you are too late." "It's over, Tarkin," Rex growled, his blaster trained on the hologram. "Deactivate the arrays." "Deactivate them?" Tarkin chuckled. "My dear Captain, their purpose has already been served. They were never meant to destroy those worlds. Only to serve as a demonstration. A demonstration of what we are capable of," he gestured to the viewscreen behind him. It showed the Republic fleet, locked in battle. And they served another purpose. To draw your most celebrated hero into a trap. Suddenly, the 2 flanking Star Destroyers broke off their attack on the main fleet and turned their full firepower on the Resolute. "General, they are concentrating fire on us," Yularen warned. Anakin saw it instantly. Tarkin hadn't wanted a battle. He had wanted a target. He had wanted him. A volley of green turbolaser fire slammed into the Resolute's bridge tower. The ship buckled violently. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Anakin was thrown from his feet, the Force his only shield against the shrapnel that ripped through the command center. He rose to his feet amid the chaos, the emergency lights casting the bridge in a hellish red glow. The main viewport was cracked, showing the executrix turning to jump to hyperspace. "They're getting away," Anakin growled. "Sir, the ship is crippled," Apo reported, clutching a wounded arm. "We've lost main power." Anakin looked at the tactical map. Rex and his men were still on Tarkin's ship, which was now powering up its hyperdrive. He would not leave them behind. "Rex," he said into his comm, his voice dangerously calm. "Get to an escape pod. Now." "That is a direct order." "But sir, the mission." "The mission has changed." "Get out of there." On the bridge of the executrix, Rex knew he had no choice. "All units, fall back to the hangar bay. Evacuate." The 501st disengaged, fighting their way back to the hangar where they had landed. They managed to commandeer a transport shuttle just as the executrix made the jump, vanishing in a flash of light. Back in the Abrogado system, the battle was over. The two remaining Star Destroyers, their leader gone, followed suit and retreated into hyperspace. The Republic fleet was left battered and bruised. The Resolute, Anakin's flagship, was a crippled wreck, its bridge a scene of devastation. They had stopped Operation Cinder. The storms above Naboo and the other worlds began to dissipate as the control signal was lost. But it was a costly victory. They had lost dozens of fighters, hundreds of lives, and a capital ship. More importantly, Tarkin had escaped, along with Rex and the captured remnants of the 501st. Anakin stood on the ruined bridge, looking out at the stardusted void where his friends had just vanished. He had won the battle, but he had lost his men. And he had seen the face of his new enemy. An enemy who did not fight with the raw power of the dark side, but with cold, calculated cruelty. An enemy who was just getting started. The rage he felt was a cold, hard thing. It was not the hot, blinding anger of his youth. It was the focused fury of a protector whose flock had been savaged by wolves. He would get his men back. And he would hunt Tarkin and his Shadow Council to the ends of the galaxy. The war was not over. It had just been given a new name. The aftermath of the Battle of Abrogado sent a chill through the optimistic halls of the New Republic. While the public celebrated the end of Operation Cinder and the saving of a dozen worlds, the leadership knew the truth. This was not a final victory, it was the opening salvo of a new, insidious war. Anakin's flagship, the Resolute, limped back to the Kuat shipyards for extensive repairs. The mood among the crew was somber. They had survived, but the loss of Captain Rex and the men of the 501st was a deep wound. They were not just soldiers, they were brothers, veterans of 100 campaigns. Their capture felt more personal than any battlefield loss. In a debriefing with the Jedi Council and the Republic leadership, Anakin gave his report, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Tarkin played us from the start. Cinder was a feint. His real objective was to capture Republic assets, specifically, the most experienced soldiers we have. He's building an army," Bail Organa concluded grimly. "Not of droids, but of men. And he's using our own to train them." "Worse than that," Obi-Wan added, his face etched with concern. "He captured the 501st, Anakin's Legion. A symbolic victory. He's trying to demoralize us, to show that even our best and brightest can be taken." "He will fail," Anakin stated, his voice like flint. "I will get them back." The search for Tarkin's fleet began. But it was like searching for a ghost. The executrix had vanished into the vastness of the outer rim, leaving no trace. Tarkin and his co-conspirators, the remnants of Palpatine's inner circle who now called themselves the Imperial Remnant, were masters of stealth and subterfuge. They operated from hidden bases and through shell corporations, funding a campaign of sabotage and propaganda. Small, targeted attacks continued across the galaxy. Supply convoys were raided. Communication hubs were destroyed. Pro-Republic senators were targeted in assassination attempts. Each attack was designed to create instability, to make the galaxy yearn for the simple, brutal order that Palpatine had promised. Weeks turned into months. The galaxy, which had been so ready for peace, found itself in a state of Cold War. The Republic had to maintain a standing military, the very thing it had sought to dismantle. The clones, who were supposed to be decommissioned and given a chance at a real life, had to remain in service. The promise of the new era was being slowly choked by the lingering shadow of the old one. Anakin threw himself into the hunt for Tarkin with a singular focus. He spent weeks at a time on patrol, chasing down leads, often with Obi-Wan at his side. Their partnership had evolved. They were no longer master and apprentice, but true equals, brothers in arms. Obi-Wan's calm wisdom tempered Anakin's fierce determination, and Anakin's bold decisiveness often spurred Obi-Wan to action. During his brief returns to Coruscant, Anakin found solace with his family. Watching Luke and Leia grow, hearing their laughter, feeling their small hands in his, it was a constant reminder of what he was fighting for. It kept the darkness at bay. Padme, now a leading voice in the Senate, was his partner in every sense of the word. They shared their burdens, their fears, and their hopes for the future. "You can't do this forever, Arnie," she told him one night, as they stood on their apartment balcony, the twins sleeping inside. "This hunt is consuming you." "I have to find them, Padme," he said, his gaze fixed on the endless streams of Coruscant traffic. "I have to bring Rex home." "And you will," she said, taking his hand. "But don't lose yourself in the process. Don't let Tarkin turn you into him." Her words struck a chord. He knew she was right. His anger, as righteous as it was a dangerous fuel. He had to be a Jedi. A protector. Not an avenger. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. General Grievous. The defeated cyborg general had been languishing in a Republic detention center, his body slowly being repaired, his spirit broken. Obi-Wan, believing that even the most broken being deserved a chance at something other than hate, had begun visiting him. Their conversations were terse at first. Grievous was sullen, defiant. But Obi-Wan was patient. He did not interrogate or judge. He simply talked. He spoke of the war, of Dooku, of Sidious. He spoke of how they had all been used. Slowly, a sliver of the old Kaleesh warrior, Kaiman J. Sheelal, the man Grievous had been before the corporate syndicates had destroyed his shuttle and rebuilt him as a weapon of hate, began to emerge. He remembered his life before the war, his people, his grief. "Sidious, he promised me vengeance," Grievous rasped one day, his voice modulator cracking. "He promised me the Jedi who destroyed my world would pay. It was all a lie." "Yes, it was," Obi-Wan said gently. "He used your pain, just as he used Anakin's." It was then that Grievous decided to help. "The Outer Rim," he said. Sidious had secret strongholds there. Listening posts. Supply depots. Places even I was not privy to. But I know the coordinates of one. A communications hub on the planet Raxus Prime. If Tarkin is coordinating a fleet, he will need it. The information was a godsend. Raxus Prime was a junkyard planet, a maze of scrap metal and toxic waste, the perfect place to hide a secret base. Anakin and Obi-Wan led a small, elite strike force. They would not make the same mistake as before. This would not be a fleet engagement. It would be a stealth insertion. Accompanied by a squad of clone commandos, they landed on Raxus Prime under the cover of a toxic storm. The planet was a nightmare landscape of towering mountains of rusted metal and rivers of chemical sludge. They navigated the treacherous terrain, their sensors guiding them toward the hidden communications hub. The base was built inside a colossal, derelict separatist dreadnought that had crashed there decades ago. They infiltrated the base, bypassing the outer patrols of stormtroopers. The intelligence was correct. This was a major nerve center for the Imperial remnant. From a central control room, they could see communications flowing to a hidden fleet, its location still encrypted. But they also found something else. Prisoner logs. Anakin's heart pounded as he sliced into the system. He found the designation CT-7567 Rex. He was alive. And he was being held at a secret prison facility on the planet Eriadu. The logs also contained information on the other captured members of the 501st. They were being reconditioned, brainwashed into becoming instructors for Tarkin's new Stormtrooper Corps. "They're trying to erase them," Anakin said, his voice cold with fury. "To turn them into weapons. Then we must get to them before it's too late," Obi-Wan said. "But this is what Tarkin does, Anakin. He finds a person's strength and twists it into a tool for his own purposes. He's trying to do to the 501st what Sidious's tried to do to you." Anakin looked at the data stream. They had the location of the prison. But the location of Tarkin's fleet was still locked behind layers of heavy encryption. "We can't do both," Anakin realized. "If we go to Eriadu, Tarkin will know we've been here. He'll move his fleet. We'll lose him for good. But if we stay here and try to break the encryption, we might lose Rex and the others." It was an impossible choice. The strategic objective versus the personal one. The fate of the galaxy versus the lives of his men. The Anakin of old would have charged off to Eriadu without a second thought. But he was not the Anakin of old. He looked at Obi-Wan, his conflict clear on his face. "A Jedi must choose the needs of the many," Obi-Wan said softly, though there was no judgment in his voice. "But a friend never leaves a man behind." Anakin closed his eyes for a moment, centering himself in the Force. He thought of Padme's words. "Don't let him turn you into him." Tarkin wanted him to make a cold, calculated choice. He wanted him to sacrifice his men for the greater good, to become a little more like the Grand Moff himself. Or he wanted him to throw strategy to the wind, ruled by his emotions. Anakin chose a third path. "We'll do both," he declared. "Obi-Wan, you and the commandos will take the data and get back to the ship. Get this intelligence to the fleet. They can begin planning the assault on Tarkin's armada." "And you?" Obi-Wan asked, already knowing the answer. "I'm going to Eriadu," Anakin said. "I'm going to get my men back." It was reckless. It was dangerous. But it was not a choice made from anger. It was a choice made from loyalty and love. It was the choice a true leader had to make. "You'll be walking into the lion's den alone, Anakin," Obi-Wan warned. "I won't be alone," Anakin replied, a grim smile touching his lips. "I'll be with the 501st. The infiltration of the Eriadu prison facility was a masterclass in stealth and audacity. Anakin Skywalker, cloaked and hooded, moved through the sterile white corridors of the high-security installation like a phantom. He was a whisper in the Force, his presence masked, his movements silent. The stormtrooper patrols passed by his hiding places without a flicker of recognition. The security cameras recorded only empty hallways. He moved with a purpose that was cold and absolute. This was not a battle, it was a rescue. Every step was calculated, every move precise. He used the Force not as a battering ram, but as a key, subtly influencing the minds of guards to look the other way, manipulating electronic locks to open silently before him. He reached the detention block. The air here was heavy with despair. He found the cell designated for CT-7567. A crimson energy shield hissed in front of the door. Inside, he could sense a familiar presence, but it was muted, weary. Anakin placed his hand on the control panel next to the shield. He didn't slice it. He simply closed his eyes and let the Force flow into the circuitry. Sparks flew, and the shield sputtered and died. The cell door slid open with a soft hiss. Captain Rex sat on a narrow bunk, his head in his hands. He was still in his armor, but the blue markings were scuffed and faded. He looked up, his eyes widening in disbelief as Anakin stepped into the cell, pulling back his hood. "General?" Rex whispered, his voice hoarse. Is that really you?" "I told you I'd come for you, Rex," Anakin said, a warm smile finally breaking through his intense focus. Rex stumbled to his feet, a surge of hope returning to his exhausted frame. "I never doubted you, sir." Not for a second he looked around. "But how did you get in here?" "This place is a fortress." "The front door was locked," Anakin said simply. "Now, where are the others?" "Reconditioning chambers." "Level 7, Rex said, his voice turning grim. "They take them in groups. They use psych drivers, memory wipers. They're trying to turn them into mindless instructors for the new recruits." He clenched his fists. "Some of the men, they've already been broken." "Not for long," Anakin said, his eyes hardening. "We're getting everyone out. Here's the plan." While Anakin freed Rex, Obi-Wan and the commandos had returned to the Republic fleet with the encrypted data from Raxus Prime. The best slicers and cryptoanalysts in the galaxy were now working around the clock to break the codes and reveal the location of Tarkin's hidden armada. Obi-Wan stood on the bridge of a new flagship, the Defender, watching the streams of data flow across the main holoscreen. He was worried. Anakin was walking into a trap, and he knew it. But he also trusted him. He trusted that Anakin's connection to his men would be a strength, not a weakness. Back on Eriadu, Anakin and Rex moved through the prison, a two-man army. They were a perfect team. Rex, with his intimate knowledge of military procedure and tactics, guided them through the facility's weak points. Anakin, with the full power of the Force at his command, was the unstoppable force that cleared their path. They reached the reconditioning wing. The scene was horrifying. In a series of sterile white rooms, clone troopers were strapped to chairs, their helmets off, their faces contorted in pain as energy fields pulsed around their heads. Stormtrooper technicians monitored their vital signs, callously adjusting the intensity of the memory-wiping devices. Anakin's control snapped. He didn't draw his lightsaber. He didn't need to. He raised his hand, and the transparasteel window of the control room imploded inward. The stormtrooper technicians were thrown back by the force of the blast. Before they could recover, Anakin was upon them. He moved in a blur, a whirlwind of precise, non-lethal force. He disarmed them, disabled them, and left them unconscious on the floor in a matter of seconds. Rex rushed to the control panels, frantically working to shut down the reconditioning machines. The energy fields died down, and the clone troopers slumped in their chairs, groaning. "Fives. Jesse. Kicks." Rex called out, running to his brothers, helping them unstrap themselves. They were disoriented, their memories fragmented, but they were alive. And they were free. An alarm finally blared through the facility. "Intruder alert. Detention block compromised. All units converge." "So much for stealth," Rex commented, checking the charge on his blaster pistols. "It was never going to last," Anakin said, finally igniting his lightsaber. The blue blade hissed to life, illuminating the corridor. "Let's give them a fight to remember." What followed was not a retreat. It was a breakout. Anakin and the newly freed members of the 501st fought their way through the prison. They were outnumbered 100 to 1, but they were the finest soldiers in the galaxy, led by a Jedi Master at the height of his power. Anakin was a storm of blue light and righteous fury. He was a shield for his men, deflecting blaster fire, collapsing corridors to block reinforcements, and carving a path through the ranks of stormtroopers. The clones, fighting with a renewed sense of purpose, moved with a synergy and precision that was awe-inspiring. They fought not for the Republic, not for a mission, but for each other. They made their way to the prison's main hangar, where transports were being prepped for prisoner transfers. "There?" Rex shouted, pointing to a large Republic-era gunship. "That's our ride." They laid down covering fire as they sprinted across the hangar. But as they neared the ship, a figure emerged from the shadows to block their path. He was tall and imposing, clad in black armor that was vaguely reminiscent of the Jedi Temple Guard. In his hands, he held a double-bladed red lightsaber. His face was hidden behind a menacing, emotionless mask. But Anakin could feel the power radiating from him, a cold, disciplined darkness. "So, the great Anakin Skywalker comes to rescue his pets," the figure said, his voice a synthesized, chilling monotone. Tarkin predicted this. "He said your sentimentality would be your undoing." "I don't know who you are," Anakin said, stepping forward to face the new enemy, "but you're in my way." "I am the future," the figure stated. "I am what you could have been, had you been strong enough to cast aside your weakness. I am the Emperor's Sentinel." The Sentinel ignited his weapon, the twin red blades spinning with deadly speed. This was Palpatine's final apprentice. The one his holographic ghost had spoken of. "Rex, get the men on the ship," Anakin ordered, his eyes locked on the Sentinel. "Go." "Sir, we're not leaving you," Jesse protested. "That's an order, trooper," Anakin yelled, not taking his eyes off his opponent. "I'll handle this." Reluctantly, Rex and the others scrambled aboard the gunship, firing back at the stormtroopers who were now pouring into the hangar. Anakin and the Sentinel faced each other in the center of the chaotic firefight. "Your attachments make you predictable," the Sentinel taunted. "Your love is a vulnerability I will exploit." "My love is my strength," Anakin retorted, and charged. The duel was a clash of opposing philosophies. Anakin's style was fluid, passionate, a dance of powerful, sweeping strikes. The Sentinel's was rigid, economical, and brutally efficient. He fought like a machine, his every move calculated for maximum effect. He was a perfect weapon of the dark side, honed and disciplined, without the wild rage of Maul or the arrogant finesse of Dooku. Their blades crashed together, blue against red, lighting up the hangar with flashes of brilliant energy. The Sentinel was strong, skilled, and relentless. He pressed Anakin, trying to overwhelm him with the speed of his spinning saber staff. But Anakin was not just a duelist. He was a master of the Force. He broke their blade lock with a powerful Force push, sending the Sentinel staggering back. He followed up with a barrage of attacks, forcing his opponent onto the defensive. "You fight with emotion," the Sentinel observed, his voice calm even as he parried the furious assault. "It makes you powerful, but sloppy. Unfocused." He found an opening, a fractional hesitation in Anakin's attack, and countered with a swift kick to Anakin's chest, sending him stumbling backward. The Sentinel lunged, aiming to impale him. Anakin caught the saber staff on his own blade, the tips of the red blades hissing inches from his face. He could feel the cold, empty darkness emanating from his opponent. There was no passion, no anger, no joy. Only a void. A chilling emptiness where a soul should be. "What are you?" Anakin grunted, straining against the pressure. "I am the will of the Emperor," the Sentinel replied, and pushed harder. From the ramp of the gunship, Rex saw that his general was in trouble. "We have to help him," he shouted. He raised his blaster, but the duel was too fast, too close. He couldn't get a clear shot. "Wait for his signal, sir," Kix advised. "We can't risk hitting the general." Anakin knew he couldn't win a battle of pure strength. The Sentinel was a machine. So he did something unexpected. He let go. He released the tension in the blade lock, redirecting the Sentinel's momentum. His opponent stumbled forward, off balance for a split second. It was all Anakin needed. He spun, his blade a blur, and sliced the Sentinel's saber staff in half. The Sentinel stood for a moment, holding two useless hilts, his single red blade sputtering out. He had been disarmed. Defeated. Anakin stood over him, his lightsaber pointed at the Sentinel's throat. "It's over." The Sentinel did not beg or plead. He simply stood there. For now, he raised his hand, and a powerful concussion blast erupted from a device on his wrist, throwing Anakin off his feet. The Sentinel used the moment to sprint towards the shadows at the edge of the hangar, vanishing from sight. Anakin recovered quickly, but his enemy was gone. The gunship's engines roared to life. "General, we have to go. Now!" Rex yelled from the ramp. Anakin didn't hesitate. He deactivated his saber, turned, and made a running leap into the back of the gunship just as it lifted off the ground. The ramp closed behind them as a hail of blaster fire peppered the ship's hull. They were away. As the gunship soared into the sky, Anakin looked down at the prison facility, a sense of grim satisfaction mixing with unease. He had rescued his men. He had faced Palpatine's secret apprentice and won. But the Sentinel was still out there. And Tarkin was still at large. The victory on Eriadu was a major blow to the Imperial remnant, but it was far from a killing stroke. As the 501st celebrated their reunion, Anakin knew they had only won a battle. The war for the soul of the galaxy was about to escalate dramatically. The intelligence from Raxus Prime, combined with the prisoner logs from Eriadu, painted a terrifying picture. The Republic's crypto-analysts, working under the direction of Obi-Wan, finally broke Tarkin's encryption. The location of the Remnant's hidden fleet was revealed. It was not a single fleet, but a network of fleets, spread across a sector of the unknown regions known as the Eclipse Staging Area. And at its heart, protected by a dozen Star Destroyers, was a project that made Operation Cinder look like a child's toy. The project was codenamed Eclipse. It was a new class of warship, a super Star Destroyer, larger and more powerful than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its primary weapon was not a turbolaser, but a miniaturized axial superlaser, capable of cracking a planet's crust with a single, sustained blast. It was a terror weapon of unimaginable power, Palpatine's ultimate tool for enforcing his order. He was building this for years, Bail Organa said in horror as the technical readouts were displayed in the Republic Command Center. "Right under our noses." "This is his true contingency," Mace Windu stated grimly. "Not just to destabilize the Republic, but to obliterate it and build his empire on its ruins." The revelation sent a wave of fear through the Senate. Some argued for a negotiated peace, for ceding territory to the Remnant in exchange for a ceasefire. They were terrified of the Eclipse and the fanatics who wielded it. But Padme stood before them, her voice ringing with defiance. "We cannot negotiate with those who would hold a super laser to our heads. That is not peace, it is subjugation. We did not free this galaxy from a Sith Lord only to hand it over to his most monstrous disciples. We must fight. We must show them that the will of free people is stronger than any weapon they can build." Her speech rallied the wavering senators. The Republic would not bow. It would fight. A desperate, high-risk plan was formulated. The entire Republic fleet, a combined force of Venator-class Star Destroyers, clone-piloted starfighters, and ships from allied systems like Mon Calamari and Alderaan, would make a surprise jump directly into the Eclipse staging area. Their objective: destroy the Super Star Destroyer before its super laser became fully operational. It was a suicide run, an all-or-nothing gamble. Anakin Skywalker was given overall command of the assault. It was a burden he accepted without hesitation. This was the culmination of everything he had fought for. The final battle against Palpatine's ghost. The mission became deeply personal. The command center for the entire Eclipse project, Tarkin's own headquarters, was located not on the supership itself, but on a nearby planet. a planet that had appeared in Anakin's darkest nightmares for years. A planet of fire and shadow. Mustafar. Tarkin, in his infinite cruelty and strategic brilliance, had repurposed the very facility where the Separatist Council had met its end. It was now a fortress, a symbol of the Remnant's victory over the Old Order. For Anakin to succeed, he would have to return to the place Palpatine had intended to be the site of his final fall to darkness. He would have to face the ghosts of his own past. Before the fleet departed, Anakin spent a final evening with his family. He sat with Luke and Leia, telling them a story about a brave knight and a wise wizard who fought dragons. He held Padme, memorizing the feel of her embrace, the scent of her hair. "I'm scared, Arnie," she confessed, her voice a whisper against his chest. "I know," he said, holding her tighter. "But I have something to fight for. I have everything to fight for. That's why we'll win." The next day, the largest fleet the galaxy had seen since the height of the Clone Wars assembled beyond the Outer Rim. Anakin stood on the bridge of the Defender, Obi-Wan at his side. The newly rescued 501st, led by Captain Rex, were prepped and ready for the most dangerous mission of their lives. "It seems we're always heading into the fire, doesn't it?" Obi-Wan remarked, a wry smile on his face. "I wouldn't have it any other way," Anakin replied. He looked at his old master, his brother. "Thank you for everything. The honor has been all mine, Anakin," Obi-Wan said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "May the Force be with you." "And with you," Anakin said. He turned to the command crew. "All ships, prepare for jump to hyperspace. On my mark." He took a deep breath, centering himself. He could feel the threads of destiny converging on this single point. The hopes of the galaxy rested on his shoulders. He would not falter. He would not fail. Mark. With a flash of brilliant light, the Republic fleet vanished, plunging into the unknown, on a final, desperate mission to save the future. The Republic fleet emerged from hyperspace into a scene of terrifying grandeur. The eclipse staging area was a nebula of swirling, dark gases, lit by the eerie glow of a dying star. And suspended in the void, like a dagger aimed at the heart of the galaxy, was the eclipse. It was impossibly vast, a black, arrow-shaped behemoth that dwarfed the star destroyers surrounding it. Its surface bristled with thousands of weapon emplacements, and at its prow, the massive focusing dish of the superlaser pulsed with a malevolent green energy. It was not just a ship, it was a statement of overwhelming power. "All gods," Admiral Akbar breathed from the command bridge of his Mon Calamari cruiser. "It's larger than the reports indicated." "Size matters not," Anakin's voice cut through the calm and commanding. "Look at the concentration of their fleet. They're protecting it. That means it's not fully operational yet. We have a chance." The Imperial remnant, caught by surprise, scrambled to respond. TIE fighters swarmed from hangar bays like angry insects. The Star Destroyers began to maneuver, forming a protective screen around the eclipse. "This is it," Anakin declared. "All wings, attack pattern Delta. Target their command ships. We need to break their formation." "Lando, Wedge," he said, addressing the leaders of the freelance starfighter squadrons, "your groups are on the superlaser. Keep them from firing that thing at all costs." "You got it, General Skywalker," a smooth, confident voice replied. "We'll keep them busy." The battle began. The two fleets crashed together in a cataclysm of light and fire. It was the Battle of Abrogado magnified 1,000 times. Lasers stitched fiery patterns across the darkness. Explosions rippled through the shields of capital ships. The scale of the conflict was breathtaking, a war fought among the stars themselves. Anakin's plan was simple and brutal: create chaos. While the main fleet engaged the Star Destroyers, a specialized strike team would make for Mustafar. Anakin, Obi-Wan, and the 501st would land, infiltrate Tarkin's fortress, and shut down the command and control for the entire enemy fleet. Their shuttle, a stolen Imperial transport modified for stealth, weaved through the maelstrom of the battle. Explosions blossomed perilously close, rocking the small ship. "We're approaching Mustafar, General," the pilot called out. "Atmospheric entry in 30 seconds. Anakin looked out the viewport at the familiar, hellish glow of the volcanic planet. He felt a tremor of the old fear, a phantom echo of the darkness that had almost claimed him. He pushed it down, replacing it with a cold, clear resolve. He was not the boy who had come here in his nightmares. He was a Jedi Master. A defender. They landed amidst the black, glassy plains, far from the main fortress. The heat was oppressive, the air thick with sulfur. In the distance, the fortress stood over a river of lava, a monument to the Empire's arrogance, its turbolaser towers already swiveling to track incoming fighters. "This is where the fun begins," Anakin muttered, igniting his lightsaber. The assault on the fortress was a brutal ground campaign. The 501st, fighting with the fury of men reclaiming their honor, crashed against the stormtrooper defenses. Blaster fire lit up the black landscape. Anakin and Obi-Wan moved at the head of the charge, a whirlwind of blue and green light. They were an unstoppable force, deflecting blaster bolts, cutting down enemies, and clearing a path for their men. They fought with the perfect synergy of two warriors who knew each other's every move, every thought. They breached the main gates and fought their way into the heart of the fortress. The corridors were a maze of stark, Imperial design, a jarring contrast to the separatist architecture that lay beneath. "Tarkin's command center is at the top of the central spire," Rex reported, studying a captured schematic. "But there's something else here, sir. A high-energy signature, deep in the lower levels. In the old collection chambers." "A power source?" Obi-Wan guessed. "No," Anakin said, his eyes distant. He could feel it now. A cold, familiar presence. "It's him. The Sentinel." "Obi-Wan, you and Rex take the commandos," Anakin ordered. "Get to Tarkin. Shut down the fleet command. I'll deal with our friend in black." "Anakin, no," Obi-Wan protested. "We face him together." "You're needed on the command bridge," Anakin insisted. "This is a fight I have to finish alone. Go. I'll be right behind you." Obi-Wan hesitated, then nodded grimly. "Don't be a stranger." He and Rex led the 501st up towards the spire, while Anakin descended into the bowels of the fortress, towards the source of the dark side energy. He found the Sentinel waiting for him in the vast, circular chamber where he was once meant to slaughter the separatist leaders. The control consoles had been ripped out, replaced by a single, throne-like chair. The Sentinel stood before it, his new, perfectly crafted saber staff held ready. "I knew you would come," the Sentinel's synthesized voice echoed in the chamber. "Drawn to me. Like a moth to a flame." "I'm here to put you out," Anakin retorted. "You are here because this place calls to you," the Sentinel said. "This is where your transformation was meant to be complete. Where Darth Vader was to be truly born." The Emperor foresaw it. He gestured around the room. "He built this fortress as a monument to his victory over you. But you defied him. A flaw in his design." "I made a choice," Anakin said. "Something you know nothing about." "Choice is an illusion," the Sentinel stated. "There is only power, and the will to use it. The Emperor is gone, but his will remains. I am its vessel. And I will complete what he began. I will show you the power you cast aside." He lunged, his red blades a spinning vortex of death. The final duel began. It was a battle not just for the fate of the fleet, but for Anakin's very soul. Here, in the heart of the darkness that was designed for him, he had to face the ghost of the man he might have been. Above them, in the cold vacuum of space, the battle raged. The Republic fleet was taking heavy losses. The Eclipse, though damaged, was preparing to fire its main weapon. On the command spire, Obi-Wan, Rex, and the 501st blasted their way onto the bridge. Grand Moff Tarkin stood there, flanked by his elite guards, watching the battle unfold with cold detachment. "Kenobi," Tarkin greeted without turning. "Your sentimental friend sent you to do his dirty work, I see." "It's over, Tarkin," Obi-Wan said, his lightsaber humming. "Your fleet is in chaos. Your superweapon is crippled." "A temporary setback," Tarkin replied, finally turning to face him. He held a small device in his hand. "The Eclipse will still fire. It will destroy the largest of your Mon Calamari cruisers. A message to the galaxy that resistance is futile. And even if you succeed here, it doesn't matter. The Empire is not a fleet. It is an idea. And it is inevitable." He pressed the button. Across the void, the super laser on the Eclipse fired. A colossal beam of green energy shot out, not at the Mon Cal cruiser, but at the planet of Mustafar itself. Tarkin smiled. The Emperor had one final order. If the Eclipse project failed, its power was to be turned upon his greatest disappointment. "This fortress, and everyone in it, will be annihilated. A fitting end for you, and for the flawed prodigy Skywalker." The beam struck the planet's unstable crust. The ground beneath the fortress began to shake violently. The entire planet was beginning to break apart. In the chamber below, Anakin and the Sentinel were locked in a furious duel. The floor buckled beneath them, and rivers of lava began to pour through cracks in the walls. The chamber was turning into a fiery tomb. Anakin felt the planet's death throes through the Force. He knew they were out of time. He had to end this. He broke away from the Sentinel and looked for an escape. The only way out was up, through the crumbling superstructure. "There is no escape, Skywalker," the Sentinel said, advancing on him. "We will die here together." A perfect, ordered end. Anakin looked at the passionless monster before him. He saw the truth. The Sentinel wasn't a warrior. He was a slave, shackled to a dead man's will. "You're wrong," Anakin said. He did not raise his lightsaber to attack. Instead, he reached out with the Force, not with anger, but with a profound, powerful empathy. He reached past the armor, past the dark side training, and touched the flickering ember of the person within. He saw flashes of a past. A young boy, Force-sensitive, taken from his family. A life of brutal, emotionless training. A mind systematically broken and rebuilt into a tool. He saw the Sentinel's one, true fear, not death, but chaos. The messy, unpredictable nature of life itself. "You don't have to be his weapon," Anakin said, his voice echoing with the power of the light. "You can be free. You can choose." The Sentinel staggered back, clutching his helmet. "No. I serve the Emperor's will. The Emperor is dead." Anakin yelled, the chamber shaking around them. "His will is a ghost. Let it go." For the first time, a flicker of emotion crossed the Sentinel's dark aura. Confusion. Doubt. Fear. His rigid form trembled. The choice Anakin was offering him was more terrifying than death. I cannot," the Sentinel stammered, his sin-sized voice cracking. Anakin saw his opening. "Not to kill, but to save." "Then I'll choose for you." He lunged forward, but not with his blade. He tackled the Sentinel, wrapping his arms around him and using the Force to propel them both towards the weakest part of the ceiling. They crashed through the crumbling rockcrete, Anakin shielding them both from the worst of the impact. They landed in a corridor one level up, just as the chamber below collapsed into a lake of fire. The Sentinel lay stunned, his mask cracked, revealing a pale, terrified human face underneath. Anakin didn't wait. He grabbed the disoriented man and began to run, pulling him towards the upper levels as the fortress disintegrated around them. On the command bridge, Obi-Wan had defeated Tarkin's guards. Tarkin himself stood by the shattered viewport, watching his own doom approach with an unnerving calm. "You see, Jedi," he said, a final, cold smile on his face. "In the end, order always prevails." A section of the ceiling collapsed, crushing him. "Obi-Wan, we have to go!" Rex yelled, pulling his master towards their shuttle, which had docked at the spire. "Not without Anakin!" Obi-Wan shouted back. Just then, Anakin burst onto the bridge, dragging the unmasked sentinel with him. He was battered, bruised, but alive. "Less talking, more flying!" Anakin yelled. They all scrambled aboard the shuttle. As it pulled away from the spire, the entire fortress collapsed into the lava below. The planet of Mustafar, struck by the weapon it was meant to control, was coming apart at the seams. The shuttle rocketed into space, weaving through chunks of planetary debris. They looked back to see the eclipse, its systems failing after the catastrophic energy discharge, being consumed by the gravity well of the dying planet. The Imperial fleet, its command structure shattered, was in full retreat. The battle was over. Anakin collapsed into a seat, exhausted. Obi-Wan sat next to him. They looked at each other, covered in soot and grime, and began to laugh. A weary, relieved, incredulous laugh. They had done it. They had won. The sentinel, whose name they later learned was Kane, sat in silence, looking at his own hands as if seeing them for the first time. He was no longer a weapon. He was just a man, lost in a galaxy he had only ever been taught to conquer. Anakin looked at him, not with hatred, but with pity. And with hope. The galaxy was free. The Empire was gone. And even the darkest souls, he now knew, could be brought back into the light. The journey was over. A new one was just beginning. The immediate aftermath was one of quiet, stunned relief. The Republic fleet, battered but victorious, collected its survivors from the wreckage-strewn void of the eclipse staging area. The retreat of the Imperial remnant was a chaotic rout. Without their leaders and their superweapon, their iron discipline shattered, leaving only scattered pockets of fanatics to be hunted down in the weeks to come. Anakin's shuttle, carrying the heroes of Mustafar, docked with the flagship Defender. As the ramp lowered, they were greeted by the cheers of the bridge crew. Anakin, Obi-Wan, and the weary troopers of the 501st walked into the hangar, a wave of euphoria washing over them. Anakin's first act was to find a comm station. Padme's anxious face appeared on the screen, and the relief that washed over her features when she saw him was the only victory celebration he needed. "You're all right," she breathed, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. "We're all right," he said, his own voice thick with emotion. "It's over, Padme. It's finally over." The journey back to Coruscant was a solemn procession. They brought with them the prisoner, Kane, the former Sentinel, who remained in a state of silent shock. They also brought the truth of Tarkin's final, self-destructive act of fanaticism. The Empire had not just been defeated, it had consumed itself. A few weeks later, a grand ceremony was held in the Senate Plaza. Chancellor Bail Organa formally announced the dissolution of the Imperial remnant and the official end of all hostilities. He honored the heroes of the war, paying special tribute to the clone army and the Jedi who had led them. In a landmark decision, the Senate voted to grant full citizenship and rights to every clone trooper, along with pensions and resettlement packages. They were no longer instruments of war, but citizens of the Republic they had saved. Captain Rex, standing beside his brothers, felt a sense of peace he had never known. Their war was finally done. The Jedi Order, too, began its own process of healing and reformation. The Council, with the full support of Masters Yoda, Windu, and Kenobi, officially revised the strictures of the Jedi Code. The forbidding of attachment was replaced with a new philosophy, the importance of mindful connection. Jedi would no longer be forced to sever all emotional ties, but would instead be taught to understand and master their emotions, to draw strength from love without falling prey to the fear of loss. It was a radical change, one that honored the path Anakin Skywalker had forged. A year passed. The galaxy slowly, cautiously, embraced peace. The massive war machine was dismantled piece by piece. Star destroyers were decommissioned, their metal used to rebuild shattered cities. The clone armor that had been a symbol of war was replaced by the diverse faces of 1,000 different species working together. The Republic was healing. Anakin Skywalker found a new role. He was not just a general or a warrior anymore. He became a teacher. Along with Obi-Wan, he helped guide the next generation of Jedi, a generation that included new younglings found across the galaxy, and a former Sith apprentice named Kain, who slowly, painstakingly, began his journey back to the light. Anakin taught them not just how to wield a lightsaber, but how to feel, how to connect, and how to find balance in themselves. But his most important role was that of a father. The narrative jumps forward, 5 years into the new era of peace. On the serene, lake-filled world of Naboo, the sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. In a beautiful villa by the water, the kind Padme had always dreamed of, a family was gathered. Padme, now a respected elder stateswoman who had retired from the Senate to focus on her family and diplomatic missions, watched from a balcony. Beside her stood Obi-Wan, his hair and beard now showing distinguished flecks of grey, a warm, uncle-like smile on his face. On the lawn below, Anakin was playing with his children. Luke and Leia, now energetic 6-year-olds, were laughing as their father used the Force to gently lift them into the air, making them soar like starfighters. They were both strong in the Force, their potential a bright, shining beacon. Anakin's face was unburdened. The shadows of war and fear were gone, replaced by the easy contentment of a man at peace. He was no longer the conflicted boy or the grim warrior. He was a husband, a father, a mentor. He was complete. He set the children down gently, and they immediately tackled him, a giggling pile of limbs and laughter. He wrestled with them playfully, his own laughter echoing across the lake. "He seems happy," Obi-Wan remarked quietly to Padme. "He is," she replied, her heart full. He found his balance. Not in the stars, but here. With them. Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Anakin and Padme walked by the edge of the lake, hand in hand. R2-D2 beeped contentedly as he rolled along behind them. "Do you ever think about it?" Padme asked softly. "What might have happened if you had made a different choice that day in Palpatine's office?" Anakin stopped and looked out at the water, the twin moons of Naboo reflected on its surface. He felt a faint, phantom echo of the abyss he had stood before, the darkness that had beckoned him. He thought of the man in the black suit, the monster named Vader he had seen in his nightmares, the monster he almost became. He squeezed Padme's hand, the warmth of her touch grounding him in the here and now. He felt the light of his children sleeping peacefully in the house behind them. He felt the steady, reassuring presence of Obi-Wan, his brother. He felt the balance of the Force, no longer a tightrope to be walked, but a vast, peaceful ocean within him. "I don't need to," Anakin said, his voice full of a quiet, profound certainty. "Because I chose this." He had fulfilled the prophecy of the Chosen One. He had brought balance to the Force. But he had not done it by destroying the Sith in a blaze of glory and self-destruction. He had done it by choosing love over fear, by choosing hope over despair, by choosing to be a father instead of a tyrant. He had saved the galaxy not by becoming a weapon, but by remaining a man. The path not taken was a ghost, a shadow of a tragedy that never came to be. The path he had chosen, the one he walked now, was real. It was a path of light, of love, of family. And it stretched on, bright and full of promise, into the peaceful future he had helped to create. The Empire was a bad dream, faded in the morning light. Anakin Skywalker was home,